So my name is Joe Monninger. I've been a professor here at Plymouth State University for 24 years. Actually, this is my 24th year, and we're sitting here in my office. This is where I spend a lot of my time and have conferences with students. I was a New Jersey kid, grew up in New Jersey, played sports, went away after college, went to Temple University on a football scholarship, went away to the Peace Corps and lived in West Africa. I started writing, just noodling around with it, wasn't really sure, never took a writing course, wasn't a particularly good student, was a C student through college. And then I sent out a short story that was accepted by Red Book. It won the Red Book Short Story Contest. Third place, I should be more accurate. And so from that I got an agent, and I started writing some other things, and I found I had a certain facility for it, and I liked doing it. I still like doing it. I've actually, this marks the 50th decade, the fifth decade that I've been publishing. So I've been doing this since 1977, more or less. I've been publishing works on a national scale. This is a story about, I believe in putting characters under pressure. I mean, Hitchcock always said, if you have two people having tea, it's interesting, but if you put a bomb under the table, then it becomes really interesting. So you have a man and a woman meeting. Margaret is a farm wife, really, whose husband has gone off to Afghanistan and was shot and is now in a vegetative state. And she meets a man when she goes down to Washington to help with a signing ceremony that will actually benefit her husband. And she meets an escort who kind of helps her to go there and falls in love. And she's faced with a dilemma. What do you do? What do you owe to your husband or to any loved one if that loved one is completely incapacitated? What does that say? How do you treat that? And are you free to form a relationship with somebody else or not? And so those are the questions that she has to struggle with. And she's an honorable person, and the person that she's with is honorable, but these are somewhat extraordinary circumstances. So this story starts actually with the sound of a phoebe. Stephen King talks about whether you see what you're writing or hear. I actually ask my students that. Do you hear what you're writing or do you see what you're writing? And for me, it's always been hearing. So this novel started with the sound of a phoebe, with the idea of a phoebe making its noise, which I love, and is kind of a harbinger of spring returning. And so that's how I started. And once I had that, and I had a woman who happened to be living on a dairy farm, and she's walking out her door, and she's hearing a phoebe, well, then I'm set in New England, and then I have to keep asking myself, well, what else would she do? Well, Biosolids doesn't seem like such a reach to me. It's just a fact of life here in New England. People use them. The university has had them up here. I'm good friends with the horticulturalist. He's always had a relationship with the different entities that could provide him things. It enriches the soil. It's a good product. We have to do something with it. So it's kind of a win-win situation all the way around. And I've used them in my own home. So it wasn't a foreign concept. It's not as if I inserted a little green man in there or something. I mean, this is just everyday life in New England. So I'm just going to read a brief section where the first ever mention of biosolids in the history of literature. And this is when Ben, who is the grandfather and the father to the man who's injured, is speaking to the woman, the lead character who's down in Washington, and they're talking about what happened that day on the farm. She heard the phone clatter down, then Ben picked it up. He's in a whirl, she said, about the grandson. That kind of day around here, Noel Grumman came over from the county and wanted to talk about using biosolids out on the 2 North Apple Meadows. We walked it, and Gordon came along. I thought he was tired out, but I guess I thought wrong. What did Grumman say? Oh, a lot of state talk. They're looking for sites where they can spread the biosolids and get them out on the landfills. Has to be at least 20 acres. We have about that up there. Some activists are worried about heavy metals, mercury mostly, and selenium, but I don't know. We don't graze the livestock up there. It's all apples. Do they pay something? Yes, but not much, but they do. We more or less leave the field empty for one summer. There'll be some smell, but it's supposed to be safe, and it's good for the soil if we ever want to use it. Well, Noel's a trustworthy sort. I've always thought so. And that's where it ends. There's a second section where Margaret's best girlfriend is calling in, and they're kind of talking about the day's events. And biosolids is mentioned again. Just checking in, Blake said, and Donnie wanted me to ask you about that biosolids deal. He thought he might be able to use it on a field he has under contract up to the Davidson's place. Emmett Davidson? The one and only. That northern pasture? I guess you know better. Grandpa Ben put down the nut and bolt he was fiddling with and pulled a rag out of his back pocket. He wiped his hands. What's he want to do with that pasture? Ben asked. Turf, I guess. Donnie has the idea he can grow turf up here and sell it down in the Boston area or over to Portland suburbs, I suppose. Well, people from Boston will buy just about anything. That's so? It's what I hear, Ben said, giving her a dry smile. But the biosolids might work on the Davidson place. It would make the turf grow pretty thick. That's what Donnie was thinking. He figures it's free fertilizer. There's a lot of that around here. You guys doing okay? Is Gordon getting excited for Margaret's return? And then it drops off there.
Well, Joe, thank you very much for sharing your story with us and your time. I, for one, really enjoyed reading it, and I appreciate that you write about wonderful things that happen here in New England with farmers, and I especially appreciate that you mentioned biosolids in your book.
My pleasure. My pleasure.